What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Letting Go podcast with your boys, George and Danny. Today, we're going to talk about something that we've kind of been getting into lately, and that is the discussion of NPC versus main character. Recently, George was visiting me in Florida while I was down there, and we got into a pretty heavy discussion with our homie Ross about NPCs and main characters, and we've also come up with a few other roles for certain people, and we kind of just went down this rabbit hole of like firing off names, saying whether or not they're an NPC, a main character, a supporting character, transitionary characters. So today we kind of just want to talk about what that means, and I don't know why the fuck we're talking about it.
Yeah, no, it's actually a fascinating framework to judge people. It's low-key judgmental, I'm not gonna lie. But
oh dude, it's hella judgmental.
It's pretty judgmental. But behind closed doors, hey, it's all good.
Yeah. No.
But
it's all...
So it kind of stems from like the life as a simulation theory. Like, if life is just a simulation, which I don't think there's any way to prove it's not, then it makes sense that there would be NPCs and main characters. NPC standing for non-playable character. And I think what we found in Florida as we were drinking beers and getting into this discussion is that everybody seems to fall into one of these categories, you know? And for some reason it was just tickling my brain, dude, to like talk about people in this way and to think about life in this way, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just, it becomes super interesting because you start like really looking at people and like really like, yeah, it's judgmental. You're really judging every single thing that they're doing. You're judging their life as a whole for like this one little thing of like, nope, fuck that. That person's not a main character, than NPC. When really there's like hardly any validity to it, but
yeah.
I don't know. It's just fun.
I think maybe some validity can come from like, if you're having these discussions about who's an NPC and who's a main character, it can help you figure out if you're an NPC or a main character. And here's the thing. If you're even having that question, you're either a main character or approaching a main character, because I don't think an NPC would even ask that question.
Yeah, that was heavy when we started talking about it, because I remember we're all sitting, for context, it's like 2 a.m. We're sitting in a fucking park. It's me, George, Ross, and our homie Kyle. And we're just all sitting there, just diving into this NPC topic. And then we took a second and we're like, wait, are we NPCs? And then we're like, no, like we're talking about this. An NPC would never question whether or not they're an NPC. So I feel like right then and there, you're just like, okay, we're at least not NPCs. We're either transitioning into a main character, we may be a supporting character for somebody, or we are in fact main characters. And then we broke each other down in terms of like kind of like life experiences and reasons for why we may or may not be NPCs. And mine specifically, from what I remember, was I was an NPC while I was living in Florida before I moved, because I was just living without ever questioning, without ever thinking about anything that I did. I just went through my mundane day-to-day life. And then my transitionary phase was when I moved to New York. And then in New York is where my main characterness started coming out, because I started doing things for me and doing all the things that I wanted to do. And I flourished into main character. And then, I think that's just like the very basis level of where my category lies. Do you want to talk about how you've gotten to the realization that you're not an NPC?
Yeah, so I think that I was an NPC probably until I was 23, 24, and I just turned 25. So...
Oh, damn. You think you were an NPC even then?
I really do.
Oh, yeah. Dude, yeah. When I met you... Bro, when I met you... at, where did I meet you? Tribeca, right?
Tribeca, yep. Met you
When
and
we met
Ross.
at Tribeca, dude, like that's when so I hadn't even moved yet, but I think my when the idea of moving started, that's when maybe my transition started. And I met you, dude, and I remember, I thought you were a cool guy, but like I was like, damn, bro, he's like hella stiff.
Right.
Like you were just like, this was you.
Hey, bro.
Sorry, guys, it just cut out. Having some Wi-Fi issues.
Yeah, my
on George's end.
my NPC self popped up on the screen for a second. But okay, so what I was thinking, the thing about the NPC framework is that we're talking about life as if life is a game, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not aware of the game, then you can't be a main character, right? If you're not aware you're playing the game, you're an NPC. Yeah. And so when I met you at Tribeca Skate Park, I was almost so engrossed in this YouTube skater persona. I wasn't thinking about it from any outside perspective. I was just completely in there, like droning it every day, like making YouTube videos, not really thinking about shit, really, just like so in the zone. So then when I met you, I was a YouTube skater. It was like going right into the filming of the videos and not really getting into any in-depth conversation. Just was all about skateboarding and YouTube.
Dude, that's so interesting because you would think that like human, that like trope of a human would be a total non-NPC because you're like self-starter, like entrepreneur, like social media influencer, whatever the fuck, but like you were a heavy NPC. And so I guess that like really opens like into thinking about like how maybe most, or if not a lot of influencers become NPCs because they get like this, you know what I mean? They're just like they're just fulfilling a function.
Right.
Which is the influencer.
I definitely know a lot of influencers who are NPCs. And so like being a hustler is not the defining character trait of the main character. For me, I think it comes down to the awareness that there is a game that is being played, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, many main characters will decide they want to succeed in that game, which could look different for each of them, I think. It could look like, you know, climbing to the top of capitalism or just being very happy. I think the metric for winning the game can be different for different main characters, but there needs to be, like, anyone who's just fully zoned in and not really, like, it's hard to describe, but anyone who's kind of like, it's just funny, man. I don't know. And I was doing it when we met, and that was after college. So I think for me, I started entering main character when I had an existential crisis.
Oh, dude, I just remembered something we were talking about. The supporting character helps an NPC become or achieve main character.
Right. Well,
because that's where I came into play. Because you were heavy NPC, or maybe like starting to question. I mean, I don't want to talk about it. Okay.
No, I think
there were a lot of things in the time that would lead to believe that you were like NPC.
Right. I was.
Stemming from certain things that we would talk about back in that time. And I was there trying to push you through certain things like, no, George, like you're getting stuck in this like frame of thinking, like go this way. And then that started pushing you towards main character to where now it's like you are like full main character.
It's really interesting because back then when I was still an NPC, I thought that I was so ahead of people in life because of my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But it was so blind, and it's crazy to think now about, I guess it makes sense because you're a little bit older than me, but
yeah,
it's crazy to think about how you were I don't know, like you inviting me to that bar and like us finally cracking into the real conversations, like helped me escape, that predicament of being an NPC.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I still think I was still entering main character.
Right. You brought me through the portal.
I was still. It's like in a video game where like there's like someone's just standing there,
right.
and like.
That was me at Tribeca Skate Park.
Yeah, for the audio only listeners, I'm pretending to be like a Sims character or something, just like standing there waiting for George to accept the quest
and bouncing a little bit,
Yeah, exactly. But it's like it wasn't until because even still like our relationship back then was it was kind of like an NPC relationship because we were both like on these like separate sides of I wouldn't not the spectrum, but we're just both chilling here, NPC like, not really like bouncing off each other yet to become main characters. But then when we started having the real conversation, that's when like a bunch of like different topics started coming up. Like those are the conversations that main characters start to have.
Right. I mean, we started really talking about our lives,
which is very self-aware, which an NPC would never be self-aware.
Right.
And we do. Okay, this is very important to say, I think. While we talk about main characters versus NPCs, there's going to be like a heavy like it's going to really sound like we're being very
we sound like assholes.
Like we kind of sound like douchebags or like what's the word? Like
dickheads.
No. Like full of ourselves or like maybe like a little too self-centered or like a little too self-actualized.
Right.
But I think it's we don't want to sound that way. We're just
it's for fun. It's for fun.
Yeah. This is mostly like a fun conversation to have. Like we don't know if this is real or not.
And there's an important thing where like you can't judge someone for being an NPC because everybody starts as an NPC. It's impossible to start. Like I think any child is still an NPC.
Yeah, for sure.
The rate at which I matured, it took me till I was in my 20s. So I'm not judging people for being NPC. I know that everybody has a different trajectory in the game,
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
And some people may never. Some people may be NPCs for life, and that's fine too. In fact, I kind of envy them in a way because things are laid out for them,
Yeah, I mean that's the whole ignorance is bliss kind of thing. You know what I mean? For example, sometimes in my life I think, man, like, what if I would have never gone vegan? Like I feel like that's not an NPC move to make such a big decision like that. And then I could have gone the other route and been like oblivious and more ignorant and I wouldn't be thinking of anything and I'd just be chilling, you know what I mean? And I could go get food wherever I want, stuff like that.
Right. It's like these days, I don't know. I look at people and it's almost like I try to discern like in their eyes and in the things they say. Like, I'm like trying to figure out like, do you know that we're chilling in this game right now? Like, are you a main character or are you like, I don't know, or do you have no awareness of that?
Yeah, I feel like you have to be in a certain space in your life to be able to maybe care if you're an NPC or not. Right. But like you don't have to be like a person like we are to not be an NPC. Like there's nothing about being like a creator or someone who does shit like this that makes you an NPC or a main character.
That's because you could
be like, yeah, I mean you could be like a total like on the like, straight and narrow path of I don't know, being a fucking business guy or a tech guy or like a
right. There's plenty of corporate 9-to-5ers who are main characters.
Exactly.
What do you like? So I think for me, the defining characteristic is the awareness of the game. What do you think it is for you? Would you say it's the same, or would you phrase it differently?
Maybe for me, I think it's maybe less about the awareness of the game. Awareness is a key factor, but I think for me it's more so about the openness. And even this in itself ties back to the things that we constantly talk about in terms of like philosophy or like Buddhism and stuff like that. Because it's like an NPC would not... an NPC is stoic, but not maybe by nature, you know what I mean?
Right,
but like somebody
hard coded to do their life.
Exactly. Somebody who dives in and wants to learn about this stuff and has like an open heart, open mind kind of thing, that doesn't seem NPC to me at all, because they're making like conscious decisions. I guess that's what it is for me, is conscious decisions.
Right. Conscious decisions. It's interesting.
I mean, that falls into the whole fate or free will thing that we've been talking about for some time now as well.
We should probably do a whole episode on that at some point.
I mean, we did, dude. Topic. We have an old episode called... It's on YouTube. I'm on a browser right now. It says...
is it Trusting the Universe? Is it that one?
It's called Free Will and Trusting the Universe.
Yep.
I actually linked it to Caroline in the Patreon when I responded to her comment.
Oh, cool.
I linked it to her if she wanted, because she went on a like, she just left like a whole comment, like really diving into it. And I was like, whoa, like we've been down this rabbit hole before.
Oh yeah.
Like what is it? Anything that I'm doing, like, am I deciding it?
Right.
Has it been predetermined?
Right. Yeah.
And I still struggle with that.
We should read that comment at some point in this episode. It was a really good comment.
I mean, I've got it up if you want me to read it now.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, so Caroline says, I don't know much about these topics, but I'm interested in the idea of life as a simulation. I've been thinking about how life is like a constant series of choices. What you wear today, or where you decide to go out to eat, which job you decide to apply for, what classes you take, or which route you take to the store, all influence everything that happens in your life. I feel like I'm making those choices, like it's choose your own adventure. But then I listened to the episode with Chad, and I thought about what he said about how much of the past influences us. It's inescapable. Am I listening to this album because my parents played it while I was growing up? Do I have this belief because of where I went to school? Am I deciding to eat this omelet, etc.? I'm torn. Life is a simulation, as choose your own adventure seems like it gives us more room to breathe. If the past is influencing us, aren't we influencing our future?
It's a great comment.
Dude, that's a really good comment, and that honestly is like why I love the Patreon. And like,
oh yeah,
I can't wait for that to get even more developed.
It's cool that people think about the things that we think about, you know. And it's cool to know that as we record these, we're landing in people's ears who are thinking deeply as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So something that popped in my head when you were reading that comment is like when you're playing a video game and you're playing the main character, and like you still can go into the house and like change the outfit, you know, and you still decide where to go. But in the metaphor of life as a simulation or a game, the overarching structure of your life as the main character is pretty predetermined. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I don't think I really believe life is a simulation. I mean, maybe indirectly. Like, I think the Big Bang happened and it all is continuing to unfold, and we have relatively little sway in that, you know?
Yeah, I think about it in terms of like, okay, you know how in certain video games it's all predetermined, but it's not predetermined in one specific route. Sometimes in video games you can choose to go in separate directions, and that determines the outcome of the entire game. You still finish the game at some point, but you went through like a different way to get it. So maybe that's how life is. Maybe there's like all these, and this could be like, you know, infinite. all these different ways that you could go, but all of these infinite different ways are already predetermined. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense, except I start to think about all the combinations of decisions I can make, and even if you just add one more person to that, like that adds like infinite permutations of decisions, and their decisions can intersect and add more potential decisions for me to make. But I still
that's
think
the universe.
That's true, yeah. And if you think about every single person's all possible decisions they can make, that is technically finite, right?
Technically, yeah, but
so then every path through the universe already exists, maybe.
Well, look at it this way. It's like when let's say you meet somebody. Let's talk about us, for example. Mm-hmm. We had our own paths that were completely like disconnected, had nothing to do with anything. And I came across you on the internet. And you were doing something that you had already decided from years before. But I also, the reason I was watching this was because of something that I had already decided years ago as well, which was skating and making videos and stuff like that. And then I entered your, sounds weird. I entered your life and brought you and helped you, supported your transition from NPC to main character, thus influencing a vast range of different directions that you could go in.
Fascinating.
Which in turn did the exact same thing for me, which in turn did a very similar thing for the people around us, which now in turn is doing for the people who are listening to this.
Right.
So it's just it, and that kind of reminds me of like, you know, the universe and like Big Bang and like stuff, you know, energy and atoms and everything bouncing off each other, because we're all just a part of that.
Yeah. It's interesting for me to think about how I was like running on automatic. Like my robot switch was on A, and I found skating. I liked skating. I made videos, and then it just snowballed into YouTube. And so it's interesting to think. I think you seem to maybe have this budding awareness, like when you had seen my videos on the internet back then. But I was just like, I was on autopilot. But you saw them, and it gave you some realization that, like, I don't know, that pulled you towards me.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure, dude. I wish I had it, but I have a really old journal from that time in my life, which was probably, I don't know, 2017, 2016. We met in 2018. Yeah, we met in 2018, and I moved to New York in 2019. So this was maybe 2016, 2017. I was watching your videos heavy, as well as some other skate YouTubers, and I was relating heavy. And I remember writing, like, all I want to do in my life is make videos and skate with good people. That's all I wanted, was to make videos and skate with good and have good friends, something like that. Because I was very unhappy with the friends that I had at that time in my life. I was very unhappy with my life in general, and that's all I wanted. So when I watched your videos, like, I would see in my brain, I was like we're gonna be friends. Like, and it's weird because it happened. You know what I mean? It wasn't in like a creepy way, like you're gonna be my friend. You know, right. Like, it was more of like like for some reason there was this energy or whatever that was I don't know, it felt like something was there without like a physical thing, and it happened. And that to me is like, for one, it's crazy. You know what I mean? And like, we could go into a whole different discussion about that in terms of like YouTube in general, like my life in that, getting sponsored, you know, by companies, but things that I never thought would happen. even us visiting the shred quarters together, like all of these things happening, it's like I wanted that, and like I got that, and I got there. But none of that could have happened if there wasn't like this. I'm kind of going off on a tangent right now, but
it's interesting.
Something feels in that predetermined through very, very, very specific decisions that had to be made on my part.
Right. I mean, I think of the idea of manifestation. It's like, you, just to keep with the smaller example of my videos, it's like you see my videos, you're attracted to them, you keep paying attention to them. There's something that happens when you pay attention to something with your energy that pulls it closer towards you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always watch the Revive guys. I watched Josh Katz from the beginning. I ended up neighbors with him in his neighborhood in Brooklyn by accident. That's crazy too. Like, I don't know if I'm sure we would have connected somehow or another, but things did. And it's funny because that was because of you. I ended up.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's another thing. Like, that was also influenced because of me.
Right. So you pushed me towards Bushwick, and then Josh entered the social sphere,
mm-hmm.
and then we did the street video, brought us closer together. We did many YouTube videos together.
Bro, it's crazy. Like, that's the only thing I could really say. Like,
right.
It's,
and Josh
to me, it's
is the
mind
link.
blowing.
Josh is the link to Revive, who for me, I have that sensation where I saw them online growing up, admired them,
mm-hmm.
and then some way or another it manifested, you know. Not really. What I think is interesting, and I think you touched on it too, is it, for me, I don't feel like any of this was really through intentional effort, you know?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Are you saying it seems very predetermined?
I think so.
So yeah, I think that too. I think heavily it's very predetermined, but what I said before is like the only way that becomes predetermined is if we made those very, very specific choices. Because even something as like, I mean, and this is a huge decision. When you got out of college, you graduated school and you had a choice to make. Is like, do I go corporate or do I go YouTube? You know?
Right.
And you decided to go YouTube. You know, there's the off chance that you went corporate, you still maintained the YouTube channel for a little bit, but there's also the chance it could have died. Like, a list of things could have happened. Had you have gone corporate, you may not be living in New York City. You may be in a completely time of your life, relationship-wise, dating back to that time. And I don't know, dude, you could be living on the West Coast. You could be still in Connecticut. You know, you could be living a completely different life, but you decided to go this way. And then as your decision was happening simultaneously, mine was too.
Right.
And then those very specific little things that happened led up to that.
Fascinating. Yeah, so actually, as you're telling me about my decision of after graduation deciding between YouTube and a real job, I realized that I think the decision to do YouTube was like my first kind of, it was maybe when I was first questioning, in that questioning phase we were talking about. So there's, I don't know if we fully fleshed this out, but there's NPC, there's main character, but there's a middle phase when you're an NPC, but you start getting these little hints and these little dabs of awareness where you're like, huh, like, is there something else here? And I think for me, like, my prescribed path in life looked like the college to corporate route. But
you, that's the thing, is you had nuggets.
You
had these like nuggets while you were in that, and that started for you as a young age, at least from what we've talked about.
Yeah.
Because that's why you were doing what you were doing. Because you knew that there was this way, and your parents wanted that for you.
Yep.
Right. So you knew that there was that way, and then you had this like outside pressure that was on top of you for that. But then you had these nuggets of, like I'm gonna skate and make videos to hold myself accountable so that I can skate. And that doesn't seem heavily NPC, because an NPC would decide, okay, I've got this outside pressure and it seems like that's the way to go. I'm just gonna go.
Right.
But there was still that thing that was like, that kept weighing on you. That was like, no, like, dude, like, come on.
What's fascinating is there were nuggets, and they led me to YouTube and this lifestyle of introspection and listening to myself, and plot, what's it called, character development, like main character development was underway. But then I fell into the YouTube path, and then I wasn't seeing the nuggets anymore, and I was just chasing this other thing. So then I almost then later I saw more nuggets that really came about during the pandemic, when like the game glitched out, and I was like, oh shit, like what the fuck is going on?
That's a great perspective in terms of the pandemic.
I was like, and I think it triggered a awareness in a lot of people, probably mental health took a plunge, which maybe represents that the game was glitching there.
Well, I was just talking to Kara actually about how I think mental health, or having poor mental health, being mentally ill, is a characteristic of that is not with that is not with an NPC. Exactly.
I think you're right.
Because an NPC, and I've met people, dude, who are like, they don't know what anxiety is. Like, they obviously have heard the term anxiety, but they're like, nah, I've never had anxiety before. You know what I mean?
That's
like
NPC shit, bro.
I've never been depressed before. And like, that's weird. Like, that's fucking
NPC
weird,
shit,
dude.
bro.
For real, yeah. That's heavy NPC. On a side of like that being like borderline like sociopathic, I think like that's just fucking weird, dude. Like you've never been anxious? Like that's some strange shit. But whatever. I digress on that. But the point is the pandemic, like you were saying, I think sparked a heavy influx of main characters popping up all over the place. And I think, and then like what you're saying, like that was like part of that transitionary thing for you.
I think,
and for me as well.
Yeah. So pandemic made me see a lot more nuggets, and I think then I started grabbing the rope, and I peeked through the simulation, or I maybe saw that it was a simulation and started, really questioning what it is that I was doing, and anyways, set me on a new path.
And that was our roof hangs during the pandemic were like, those are heavy, like that's a heavy main character scene.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like picture like you're watching a movie or like you're in a game or something. Like the dynamic and the things that were happening that was main character. Like NPC is like the people walking by. NPC is the people inside their apartments while we're up there. And that's from our perspective, because that could be totally wrong.
Right.
But from our perspective, like that's the thing is fucking happening, and that's become such a that's a thing in our lives. It's like, summer 2020, like when everything changed.
Yeah, and have it sitting up there and having conversations about life, and that's continuing now too. And it's interesting that we're doing it through the internet, because I don't know, when you were saying all that stuff about finding my channel and watching the Revive guys and that later manifesting in real life, I just couldn't help but feel like the internet is tied to all of this somehow, and I don't know, connects more threads of the universe together. Maybe is pushing more people into main character than ever before, Yeah,
which is weird.
Yeah. And another thing that popped in my head through all this is kind of tying it back to Caroline's comment on Patreon. So Caroline had said something about like, it seems like the past is really influencing us and making our decisions for us in a way. But then if the past is influencing us, aren't we then now influencing our future? Right?
Dude, that's a That's some good shit, dude. Like that last sentence is fucking. When I read that just now out loud, I was like, whoa, like that's heavy.
And so now I'm like thinking, oh shit, I just started raising my desk. It's just interesting thinking about the sensation of sitting right here on this podcast. And sometimes this thing happens to me where I'm just like, whoa, like, how the fuck did I get here? You know?
Yeah, that happens to me a lot too.
But it does feel like we're consciously deciding to do these podcasts, you know?
It does, but it also doesn't.
In this moment, I'll say it does not. I'm just here for some reason.
Yeah, but like in the moment, like where we're texting and we're like, "Oh, are you still on for the pod?" And you texted me yesterday, like, "Oh, hey, I can't make the podcast tonight." Like, and then we're like, "Okay, let's do tomorrow." Like, we're organizing, and yeah, we're making that decision. But like, what? I mean, we could go back to what we were just talking about in terms of pandemic. Like the podcast was born.
Yes.
In the pandemic.
Yes, it was.
As your thing. And I shared that clip with you the other day about my heavy insistence on let's make this a joint podcast. From 2020, wait, what the fuck am I saying? 2020.
2020.
From 2020, I was saying, bro, let's make this a joint podcast. And I would bring it up often, I remember. And now, you know, fast forward, you know, 2 years later, we're in this heavy right now, but the podcast took this shit was like dead for a while.
Yeah.
For at least a year. The podcast was almost maybe non-existent. And now it's like we made the decision to start the podcast up again, right?
Yes, we did.
Did we?
Yeah, well,
that's where I'm getting is like I don't know if we did because
we were having social media meetings once a week, and then we slowly were like, oh, what if we recorded these shits and put it up as a podcast?
It's interesting because that's also the exact same conversation we had 2 years ago when we were saying, I mean, it was your podcast, but I was your recurrent guest. Like,
that's right.
It was me every single fucking week for the exception of maybe 2 episodes. And the reason we were doing that is because we were finding ourselves having these conversations at bars or in the park or on the roof, and we're like, damn, bro, like we could have just recorded this whole thing as a fucking podcast because we would dive in heavy. So what is it? What did? Fuck,
I'm gonna pull a crazy. I have a crazy
go
one for you. It's
ahead.
like. It feels like there's just some sort of energy. The conversational energy is not in our control, right?
Right.
And there is some energy pulling us towards doing this podcast. But now I'm wondering, you know, we think we're main characters now, but what if we're just the NPCs that have a podcast where they talk about being main characters, you know?
That's too meta, dude. Like that's like too much.
I think
like
right.
that gets too heavy because okay, let me tell you this. It's like we just talked about the like sponsorship type stuff before getting on this. It's like I'm making decisions now in my life outside of the podcast that are because of the podcast.
Right.
Certain things. I'm even like I want to buy a new desk. And Kara and I are moving, so when I'm like looking at places, like I'm looking, where can I put a desk? Like what can be like my like podcast studio type of thing. So I'm making conscious decisions when I go out and do that, but those conscious decisions it feels like those are like those specific things that are being influenced by something that I didn't fully make a decision on.
Right.
Which was to have
the podcast.
Right. And it's like we made the conscious decision to change the podcast from dropping in to letting go. That was a conscious decision that we made. But did we make the conscious decision to shift from dropping in to letting go more existentially or philosophically, in a more philosophic sense? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think so. And my predominating feeling is that we just kind of ended up here. And it's making me feel like we're NPCs, bro.
Bro, maybe we're just like heavy NPCs and we just like never thought about it.
Nah, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
Because again, we're open to the possibility that we're NPCs, and I don't think an NPC would do that. I think the moment an NPC is like, am I an NPC? Boom, they're in the questioning or transitionary phase.
Yeah, bro. NPCs just be getting like run over by cars and shit. Like,
right.
Like every minute.
Yeah, like what are the odds
running into doors?
What are the odds that we haven't been clipped by a car yet? Or I guess you have, but you
That's
didn't
not
die.
true, dude. I got heavy hit by that car.
That's true.
Bro, maybe I was still an NPC because that car
actually
fucking
kinda... And you just flopped over like an NPC,
bro.
dude.
Bro, I was like, bro, I flew. I went from one side of I don't remember what street it was on Knickerbocker and fucking I don't know. I went from the edge of that stop sign to the fucking like sewer on the other side of the street.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So that's heavy NPC, bro. And I don't fucking know, dude. This shit eats at me when I start to think about it because it's not something you're gonna figure out.
Right.
You know, and like this whole conversation is mostly just like us having fun and like talking shit, but the whole fate or free will type thing really eats at me. And I've journaled about it. I've thought about it intensely. We've had very intense conversations about it. And it's like,
the one thing that I like about the fate or free will conversation is when I get stressed about like, I guess one of my biggest stressors in life is like, am I doing the right things in my career? Like, should I have just figured something out that makes a lot of money and you know is easier on me in that way? But then when I think about the fate or free will thing, I'm like, okay, if it's free will, I'm doing fine, you know. If it's free will, that's crazy that I'm here in this fairly happy position, you know. And if it's fate, then it's like, oh well, then fuck it, you know. It doesn't matter anyway. I could stop worrying about that shit so much. So it actually, the fate or free will conversation lends me towards the philosophy of letting go, you know, the title of the podcast.
Yeah, there's a heavy sense of detachment. And
right.
It's kind of just like you're along for the ride, but you still get to make decisions based on like your morals and your ethics.
Right. How do you feel about that idea of detachment? I feel like that's one of the main, like, when people talk about letting go and shit like that, Buddhism and like kind of utter acceptance, I think some people are like, then aren't you like detached from life?
I think there's a difference between detaching and disassociating. I've been heavy into dissociating throughout my mental health journey. I used to dissociate like crazy, which in a sense was detaching, but it was an unhealthy form of detachment, because I was when you dissociate, there's an aspect of not caring, but it feels very defeating. When you let go, when you detach in a more whole way, in the terms of letting go and stuff like that, there's a reason that is more holistic. I don't know if that's like the right way to word it, but it's conscious. It's more conscious.
Yeah. When I think letting go, it's like and detachment, it's more like oh fuck, like everything is beautiful and everything is fleeting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, as opposed to everything sucks and I'm just like gonna sink, you know?
Right.
I mean, the philosophy of letting go is by far like my favorite thing in the world, but I have so much trouble with it. I mean, letting go is not something that comes easy. You know, I mean, we have the tattoo, and it's a philosophy that I try my best to embody in my life, but by no means is letting go something that I have fully figured out. I've been able to let go of a lot of things, but letting go is very hard for me. And for me, the tattoo stands as more of a reminder rather than an acceptance of the philosophy. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because I can look at it and think more than just like, this is who I am. But now it's there, and like one day I'll get there. But I do practice the philosophy. Try to practice the philosophy in everything, you know.
Right.
More so in things like this, things like where I'm going, things like what life is about, stuff like
Right.
that. And that ties into the detachment thing, and detaching is very fucking hard because I think it's a slippery slope between something positive and something negative.
Well, it's interesting, and it even connects to the whole fate or free will thing, but I feel like the status quo mindset to be in this society is to kind of have a vision for what your path is going to look like in the future, and like kind of try to make sure it happens that way. Mm-hmm. And the letting go, and I actually think I think I'm pretty good at it. Like, I think I'm good at it. I think I'm so disattached to any particular vision of my future that like sometimes when I'm talking to people, like I see the almost like confusion in their eyes when I am open to them about how I'm like very open to whatever my life is going to look like. I don't have a 10-year plan per se. Mm-hmm. Like I
feel you on that.
Like the way I manifest my future is more in the way that we're doing with this podcast, where this thing feels natural and it has arisen and it feels good. And so I keep putting my energy into it, you know?
I feel you 100%. Does that, there's a whole nother fucking thing. Like, are you familiar with hedonism?
Hedonism. I don't think so.
Or being a hedonist?
No. Let me look this up. At least a definition for now.
Yeah. It's a person who is in the pursuit of pleasure. And they base all their decisions based on pleasure, and that's it.
Okay, so like partying, sex type of thing?
Yes, exactly. Partying, drugs, alcohol, sex, even like monetary pleasure, things that just provide pleasure to a human being.
Okay.
Which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. I think I don't vibe with the hedonist mentality, but I vibe with a part of it. And I think the part of it that I may vibe with is, in being a hedonist, there's an aspect of letting go and in accepting the present moment.
Right.
And that's it. But I don't want to get caught up in the pleasure seeking, because that's not life. I don't think life is just all about pleasure. It's like you have to experience the bad things.
Well, what's interesting for me is the bad things are inevitable. Even if you're prioritizing pleasure, you're also going to face the bad things because they're just a part of it.
I just think there's a sense of pleasure seeking that becomes it can become toxic, because it could lead to a sense of like avoidance.
But is seeking...
Think about it this way. Let's say you seek pleasure, you have problems in your life, and then you drown them out with alcohol because it makes you feel good.
So the alcohol
that's not good.
Is the pleasure. No, that's not good.
You know, but that's not the thing. The drugs is not the pleasure. I mean, the pleasure of drugs that's not good. The pleasure of gambling is not good. It's like there's these very like things that carry a lot of negative weight to them that aren't good. So that's why pleasure seeking in that way I don't vibe with. I find that I vibe with pleasure seeking in a different way that aligns more with like a more Buddhist or even Stoic way of thinking, which is like taking walks But I don't necessarily think that a person who identifies as a hedonist finds pleasure in those kind of things, because they find pleasure in external, superficial things.
Okay, that's interesting. So, yeah, because pleasure I think, can have a pretty wide definition.
Yeah.
I think in hedonism, it seems like it's a negative connotation of pleasure.
Yes.
But because when I hear the word pleasure, I think like happiness is also a pleasure, and love is also a pleasure. Like,
But there's also toxic forms of all of them
certainly.
that don't add to personal growth.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, we're going on a different topic right now, but
That's fine. But, yeah, I mean, hedonism claims that human behavior is determined by desires to increase pleasure and decrease pain. It is interesting because Buddhism is aimed at the end of suffering.
yeah, but it's different because Buddhism is more about becoming whole, while I feel that hedonism is more about avoiding that wholeness.
Right.
Hedonism is more like in the moment pleasure. And the thing about Buddhism is about being able to find pleasure at any moment.
Yeah. And Buddhism certainly encourages a non-attachment to pleasure.
Yeah.
You don't want to be relying on
exactly. Exactly. That's a big thing too. Which is, I don't know, shit's tough sometimes, but
yeah.
I don't know, dude.
All right, how do we tie this back to NPCs?
Bro, I don't know, but on these house tours that I've gone on recently, dude, you know who is a heavy NPC in this world? You've definitely experienced this. Okay. Fucking leasing agents, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, leasing agents are like the most NPC motherfuckers I've ever experienced in my life, dude. They just stand there like in the corner of the apartment while you look at the apartment by yourself, and then they're just like, all right, well, let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah.
You know, and then they're like, would you like to fill out an application? Dude, what the fuck is that shit, dude? These people don't talk.
It is. That's interesting because then could you say every waiter is an NPC?
Some are. Some waiters are NPCs. The waiters that fucking vibe with you are not NPCs. Like it's like think the trope of like waiter becoming or working a waiting job to become an actor.
Yes.
Those aren't NPCs.
Right,
that's main character as fuck. That's main character as fuck. The waiter who just fucking waits for 20 years with no Chad's a server.
Yeah.
Is Chad an NPC? Dude, Chad's like the most main character person I've ever met in my life. Was Chad an NPC heavy when Chad was heavy into drinking and skating and all that lifestyle that he was in? That's heavy NPC. Or at least, we didn't talk about the other aspect of it, which is villain.
Oh, yeah.
And you can be your own villain. A villain is still a main character, but they're not necessarily a positive main character.
Right. You have awareness, and you're just trying to fuck shit up.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the point is like, dude, fucking the people who bag your groceries, dude. Like, what is that? Like, no disrespect to the job, because I've been there. I've worked that job, dude. I've done that. I've been the person that bags your fucking groceries for 9 hours a day. But I have not been the person who bags your groceries for 9 hours a day that doesn't say a fucking word while they do it. There's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're bringing up is it's kind of like, have you ever searched Oblivion NPC on YouTube?
No, I can't say I have.
So it's like these videos of just small interactions with people in society, and it's got like a little video game progress bar on the bottom, and just like these little video game assets, and it's got like the video game music going.
Yeah.
And so they play that in front of just like either a very normal interaction, and it just gives you NPC vibes because of the music and the little icons.
Yeah.
Or like there'll be like an aggressive interaction, and then like the more intense music will play.
Shit, bro, your Wi-Fi just cut out.
Bro, my fucking Wi-Fi, dude.
Bro, you got that swag Brooklyn Wi-Fi.
Oh my god.
I'm on that billionaire West Coast San Francisco Wi-Fi, dude.
Dude, if I was on corporate, I'd be fired for dropping my Zoom calls.
Anyway, go back to the Oblivion shit.
So anyways, when you describe the bagger at the grocery store, like the people, the thing is, I want to defend the employees. I think a lot of them are probably NPCs, right? But I think a lot of people, and this is what I was thinking when I brought up the waiter thing, is a lot of people turn on this NPC mode when they need to play this role, you know?
Yeah. But also like that says something in itself because dude, I've worked so many NPC jobs in my life. I've been working for a long time. And I've worked in retail stores, I've worked in the food industry, I've worked at grocery stores, I've worked at farmers markets. I've worked at a lot of shit that is so boring and so fucking like involves no personality. And never ever in a single one of those jobs have I exhibited that type of attitude or personality. I've always been the type of person who talks and tries to enhance the experience of people. I feel like I'm in a fucking job interview right now, but
like I would hire you, bro.
But it's true. It's true. I've always, and I've been known for it in my jobs. People are like, "Oh, Danny, you're like the way you speak, like to customers and shit like that. Like it's very real." And I used to be called the granny killer at a store I worked at when I was like 17 because the old ladies loved me because I was so personable. But the point is I need to stop stroking my ego. The point is there are people like that because when I encounter, you know it, dude. When you encounter a person at a store that just is bubbly and they have that energy, you leave the store like, oh wow, that person was really nice. You know what I mean? Like even on these house tours I've been on lately, when me and Kara leave, we're like, oh, that was a really nice person. You know, like they were great, and like we laugh and we make jokes later on, but then there's like the people that we haven't even talked about once since leaving that tour, and it's like because they didn't leave an impression whatsoever. So even in these jobs and in the sense that people can turn it on or off, there still is like this thing, this like overpowering thing or this underlying thing that leans NPC or main character.
Right. I will say like there's this, the person who recommended I read The Artist's Way was a barista.
Really?
Yeah, that's like that's like a main character ass barista right there.
Who?
So the way what happened was, I think I walked by this person one day and then like I got a DM from them saying like, I think I saw you, whatever. And in that DM recommended the book to me for whatever reason.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I read the book, or I started reading the book. I don't know. At some point in this timeline, I go to this local coffee shop and she's there, like working there. And then we have a little conversation or whatever. But obviously that's a main character barista.
That's true. You know who? I don't think this person will ever listen to this podcast. I don't know if I should go there.
Do you want to text me the name?
I'll just say it. You can mark this if you want to cut it out.
Nah, just text it. I don't want to be editing.
Nah, fuck it. It doesn't matter, dude, because this isn't who the fuck cares, dude? Like, what are we gonna do?
Bro, we might get canceled, bro.
Do you remember? Okay, I'll make it very vague. Do you remember the person that we ran into at that coffee shop in one of our first meetings in Brooklyn, who we had also happened to run into them as a person who was working for a YouTuber when we also met up with them at Variety?
Oh, yes.
I get hella NPC.
Really?
I do, yeah.
I get NPC with nuggets.
Yeah, NPC with nuggets works.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. There's a huge difference because think about. Okay, you weren't there, but it was me and Ryan, and we went to this coffee shop, a street past, like by Metfresh, very small coffee shop, and me and Ryan talked to this girl for like an hour. I wasn't loving the conversation. I was deeply fucking annoyed and kind of bothered and didn't want to talk and I wanted to leave. But the point is like they were very like just happy-go-lucky, you know, talk about everything type of shit. And then when I think of baristas, it's like there's different kinds. There's the barista who won't fucking say a goddamn word to you, and then there's the barista who talks to you. And that goes with every one of these like service jobs. You know? And
Right.
The same thing can be said for what we started this whole conversation on, which was the fact that there are influencers who don't have a fucking personality other than being an influencer.
Right.
Which is what you were.
That's right. I was playing the role.
Exactly. When I met you, I liked you, obviously. Like, I wasn't gonna judge you and talk shit, but it was different than what I thought I was going to experience. Because I thought it was gonna be different, but you were very NPC-ish.
Right. That's interesting because when I meet an influencer or someone from the internet, I know it's going to go one of two ways. Mm-hmm. One way is they are just like fucking weirdos. Like, it sounds so mean, but like they interact in person using their internet persona. But like you could tell it's like not, they're hiding something. They're playing a role. And then the other way is like they connect with you on that human level when you meet them. And
exactly.
So when we met, I was playing that role of YouTuber still, you know? Like the real life interaction, I played it as if it was an internet interaction in a way. Yeah.
I remember during that weekend or the time that we hung out, like I remember thinking in my brain, and I don't think we've ever talked about this. I remember thinking in my brain, like, I want to have a real conversation with this guy. But we couldn't. Like, it wouldn't happen, dude. And I don't know if maybe, like, that's because Ross was also there or if it was because you weren't ready for that kind of thing. But the most real interaction that we had that time that we met each other was when we skated, and I don't even know if you remember this, was when we skated 51, and we made that video. It's your skate setup hacks video, and we remember like we were like the scooter kids are disappear or something. There's like a scooter riding by itself or some shit, and then we played skate on the box, and we were kind of being a little bit more funny with each other. Mm-hmm. There was more jokes rolling around, but it was still very like tense. And,
yeah, it's tense,
and it just wasn't there. And I mean, that brings up a whole other thing in my brain, which is like, how the fuck did we connect a year later and then form the relationship that we now have 3 years later? But I don't know, bro. You were NPC as fuck, dude.
That tension is interesting, bro.
Well, yeah, I mean, tension, dude. NPCs, you have tension with NPCs,
right? And
without a doubt.
That's very much like what I was saying. When I meet someone and I try to like see it in their eyes, if they're like, are they gonna connect on that real level or not? You know?
Yeah.
And I've met people, dude, who I've known them for years, and never have I felt like I got on that real level with them. You know?
Dude, someone just popped in my brain.
I bet it's the same person, dude.
I don't know.
Do we both
Let's
know
see.
them?
We do. We do both know them. But
Okay.
I don't know if you're going to... I don't know.
I'll tell you who I'm thinking of.
If it is, our brains
Oh
are
my
really
god,
into it.
similar.
Similar? Okay, let me think.
I'm just texting
Is it the
you.
same friend group?
Yeah.
Oh, M? Was that weird to say out loud?
Nah.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. That's an NPC.
And the thing is, with this particular NPC, dude, we're fucking assholes, bro. With this
Dude, I'm fucking dead.
I'm actually might smoke some weed. With this particular NPC, dude, I tried for years straight to like have those conversations to like develop it, but they weren't ready, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
They weren't ready.
Dude.
And I wouldn't be surprised. Like, you obviously put effort into like dragging me out of the fog, and luckily I was almost ready at that time. So then we got there whenever it was that we started hanging out at night and having more real conversations. But dude, I bet if I stayed in that YouTuber role all the time in all our interactions, our friendship would not have developed.
Yeah, no, not
And
at
I can
all.
actually think of other internet creators I know that I've never left, or they have never left that internet role around
Yeah,
me, you know?
I hear you. A few names pop up right away.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because there's also that popped something into my mind, which is like there are people who are NPC outwardly, but are heavy main character more inward.
Right. Well, I immediately again think of the waiters potentially.
True.
Like, and it's actually I wanted to share this. No, it doesn't really add much to the conversation, but can give any listeners something to read if you're interested. The philosopher Sartre, John Paul Sartre or something, he writes about a concept called bad faith, and he specifically brings up the example of a waiter. And it's when the waiter is playing their role and they lose touch with who they actually are. And basically what he says in that writing is like, that's kind of fucking weird that humans just go around and at some times we just play these roles where we hide ourselves and we act as something else. And we're presenting that to other human beings.
That reminds me of people that take things too seriously. The security guard who kicks you out for skating is taking their role way too seriously. Like, I understand that it's a job, and that makes sense, and we'll leave, and we're always very respectful about it. We're usually very respectful about it. But it's that maybe there's ego tied to it.
Yeah, and Karens, I think of Karens too.
Yeah, that pops into my mind. People who take certain roles too seriously.
Yeah, and who are unwilling to, like, sit down and relate, or look someone in the eyes and like let it go, like let the role go for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are my
That's
best
interesting.
friends, dude. People who can do that. Those are the people who become my best friends.
Honestly, same. Like, that's like when I hang out with skaters, if they can't let go of the identity of a skater, it's like I less and less want to hang out with you because I don't want to just hang out and talk about fucking skating, dude.
I'm the same.
I love skating, but dude, like, that was what was happening with me and you back then. Is like I really enjoyed skating, hanging out, and making videos with you while we were quote unquote working. But for me, there was something that was like, I needed something more fulfilling in my heart, and I knew that I saw it in you as a friend, but I needed it to be more real. And that's why I asked you that day at Owl's Head. I was like, yo, let's, like, do you want to get a beer after this? Because I remember having the thought, which is interesting to think about because it was a very, like, intrusive thing that was happening, which was like why don't you do something else? Like, why don't you go, like, have some conversations that aren't like skating related. And then and it was hard for me, dude. It was hard for me to gain the confidence to muster up that courage and say, hey, do you want to get a beer after this? Because I was already thinking of like I was thinking like self-defeating thoughts. I was like, he's gonna say no. He doesn't want to. He doesn't see me as a friend like that. And eventually I was like, fuck it, dude. This is just a dude.
Exactly.
And we're already hanging out like semi-regularly.
Dude, I think you might be a fucking quest master.
Maybe, dude.
Like,
I don't fucking know.
I think of you like offering me the beer and then you freeze and I see the options on the screen. It's like, take beer, reject beer.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. And dude, and this is something that I don't even know if we've spoken about this publicly. Is like I think we have. You didn't say yes. You didn't say, yeah, dude, that sounds sick. Let's go get a beer. You said,
wait, let me guess.
Go ahead.
I was like, oh, like that sounds fun. Like maybe like I'm a little tired. Let me think about it. Let me go home and think about it.
Yeah. 100%. You said, that's exactly what you said. And then we skated down that path next to Owl's Head, and then we skated,
pizza, right?
We skated from Owl's Head back up towards closer to where you, like South Brooklyn.
Yeah, towards Park Slope.
Yeah, and then you got pizza. I didn't eat any because it's fucking not vegan. Yeah. So I sat there with you while you ate pizza, and I remember saying it a few more times, like, so do you want to go get some beer after this? And you kept saying like, oh, maybe, bro, like I'm a little tired. And we looked up some spots in Park Slope to go to relatively soon after the pizza, and like nothing was like really like calling out to you. And I said, bro, like there's a spot in Bushwick called Carmelo's. I've been going there a lot. We should go. And you looked at the fucking thing and you were like, I don't know, dude, that's far.
Dude, that was L to the G, my dude.
L to the G, which is awful, but you said, you were like, and I knew, dude, I was like, we're not going to fucking, like, this isn't going to happen. And I went home after that, and you went your way, and then I randomly got a text from you that said, like, fuck it, I'm down, or some shit like that. And I was like, oh, shit. And then we got ready, and then we went, and we met up, and it was like a whole nother thing, dude. And then that was the spark of you transitioning, at least more so, into main character.
Yeah, definitely in our friendship, you know. We moved towards what is it, like the main
Are you high already?
Yeah, I don't even
Your eyes already are like fucking like really? This. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, but you know, sometimes I am still hesitant to accept plans. I'm better at it. But
no, I know.
One thing to my defense is I do think I'm an introvert. Introvert. Yeah. And so sometimes I just need that little time in my room, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
But then, so that's probably what happened. I don't remember.
But this is a conversation that we've had a lot too. Are we an introverted extrovert or are we an extroverted introvert?
Right. And, you know, first thing is, it's so hard. Sometimes these are hard because it's hard to define a human, you know, with any label.
Yeah.
With that said, I need plenty of time alone to recharge, but I love being with people. Mm-hmm. So whatever that makes me, man, that's what I am.
Yeah. And I'm not even fully sure what mine is. It's like I also need time to recharge, but I also crave the interaction once I'm in that introverted space for too long.
Interesting. I think I do too. It's less of a craving, but I do hit that point where I'm just like ready to see people. Something that's developed for me in adulthood is, I really like doing things alone now.
I feel you. I feel that.
You know, in the past,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just in the past, I wouldn't even like go to the park by myself. I'm talking like
Yeah.
college and earlier, but now I just love that shit. I love going to the thrift store, walking around with the camera. So that's
I
made
feel
me
like
enjoy
those
my
kind of
alone time
things.
more.
Yeah, those kind of things also are like heavily reliant on like where your life is at the moment.
Right.
Because like for me, it's like I start to think about like now more so like we're looking to live in, like we're looking to get a house. So it's like now I'm more so trying to like get away from that. It's like I love the city. I love San Francisco. I love New York City. I love the city and I love the city life, but I'm also like feeling kind of like, oh dude, it feels so great to like have more space. And for like when we're looking for houses, like, oh, it's quiet over here, dude. Like, especially like I want to start gardening and stuff like that. Like I look for more backyard space, front yard space. Like just I feel more and more inclined to do those things like alone or like, you know, with Kara, stuff like that. But I also do know that I do crave that like experience of like being with people as well. But I find that it's happening less and less these days. But also I'm getting older, which is another thing. I mean, I'm going to be 27 this year, dude, in a couple months. So
Yeah, it's not that old.
yeah, but it's a big difference from when I was 24, fresh in New York.
We are youngins, dude.
Maybe,
Do you feel older than me? I just turned 25.
You just turned 25 and I'm about to turn 27. I don't think I really feel that much older than you just because we kind of do the same shit.
Right.
And our you're also more of a mature 25-year-old in some aspect. I do think you have a sense of immaturity in you that I don't quite understand sometimes.
Interesting.
But I can empathize because I also had that when I was younger.
I'm so
I mean, dude, you're at the age basically like that I was when I moved to New York.
Right, and you've been through a lot.
And there was a lot has shifted and changed in that time. Does that mean that I'm still not, I don't have that in me? No, not at all. I do. And I feel it sometimes, but there are certain things sometimes where I'm like, like, it's a fucking kid.
That's so interesting to me. I would love to hear, you know.
But then again, like, Kara's 23 and she's more mature than I am.
That's fascinating. Because let me tell you, when I was 23, I was a different person.
Oh, dude, when I was 23, I was a piece of shit. Like,
that was only 2 years ago for me, though. But I feel like I changed so much every year, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's inevitable and it's going to keep happening, but that's where the whole fucking fate and free will thing comes into fucking play that I can't seem to get a grasp on. Is like, what shapes who you are? Do you decide to be who you are, or is it fate that is creating who you are based on your past experiences? Like Caroline said, what the fuck did she say?
I have an answer.
She says, the past is influencing us. Aren't we influencing our future? I don't know, dude.
All right, here's my answer.
Let's hear it.
You need to have a certain amount of experiences. Those are going to begin to shape you in your early life. But I think when you hit enough experiences, then you shift into more of a position to be able to decide. You know?
Is that wisdom?
Yeah, I think so. Built up experiences. I think so.
That's cool though. I like that.
Yeah, that just popped into the old brain. I'm gonna write that one down.
That's cool. I mean, well, I guess with that being said, I'm excited for all the rest of the experiences to happen, and I guess let them happen as they do.
Yeah, man, and we'll be talking about many of those on future episodes of the podcast.
We will.
Should we wrap it?
I think this is the absolute perfect time to wrap it. But are we deciding to wrap it, or did the universe bring us to this conclusion?
I will say, like, the line I just pulled to wrap it, I don't even remember what it was. It just popped in my head like in the instant. Okay, we want to give a huge shout out to our patrons. I would say here's what I think the patrons are doing for us right now. and this is very honest, I think they're making me feel so excited to keep working on this podcast, to know that we're building a community of people interested in the things we're talking about. It just feels so good. And thank you to our page. Did I say the names?
No, I'll go ahead and say them. Just
All right.
big thanks to Hayden, Evan, Brian, Caroline, and Jack. Thanks so much for supporting us and being a part of our community. Like, that's what we're fucking doing this for. Like, it means the world to us that you guys, believe in us and want to be a part of this journey. This is so much more than having fans. This is so much more than being influencers of any sort. This is us truly and honestly building a community of like-minded individuals, and it makes me happy and it pushes me forward.
That was beautifully said, my man. Yeah, so that's patreon.com/lettinggo if you want to support us.
It's $10 a month, dude. That's one burrito. Just one burrito out of your month, dude.
Right. Okay.
And we have our fucking our Zoom call coming up this week. This next week.
Right. Yeah, so once a month Zoom call. Plenty of perks. You guys can submit questions. We've been plugging the Patreon enough. Let's fucking. I'm gonna probably go to sleep.
I'm about to have dinner, bro. I'm starving.
Wow. Okay, we're on different wavelengths right now.
Oh yeah, it's 8:00, dude.
All right, listeners. Good morning, good night, or enjoy the meal.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you in the next one.